I still remember the exact moment when Margaret Whitmore looked me straight in the eyes and said those words. It was a cold November evening in Boston, and the rain was hammering against the windows of their Victorian home in Beacon Hill. The kind of house that screams old money, with its perfectly manicured front garden and brass knocker that probably cost more than my entire month's rent back then. I was 24 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in computer science from a state university. Nothing fancy, nothing that would impress the Whitmores. I had met their son, Daniel, at a coffee shop near MIT, where I was working as a barista while trying to get my career started. He was getting his MBA, charming, kind, and completely different from his family. We had been dating for 8 months when he finally convinced me to meet his parents. I was nervous, obviously. Daniel had warned me that his mother could be difficult, but I thought he was exaggerating. I wore my best dress, the navy blue one I had bought specifically for job interviews. I brought flowers and a bottle of wine I could barely afford. I smiled. I was polite. I tried to be everything they would want for their son. Dinner was uncomfortable from the start. Margaret sat at the head of the table, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a pearl necklace that caught the light from the chandelier above. Daniel's father, Richard, barely spoke, just nodded occasionally and focused on his steak. The dining room felt like a museum, everything perfectly placed, not a single item out of order. Margaret asked me questions, but they were not really questions. They were tests. Where did my parents live? What did my father do? Did I come from the city? Each answer I gave seemed to disappoint her more. My father was a mechanic. My mother was a nurse. We lived in a modest neighborhood in Dorchester. I watched her lips press into a thin line with every response. After dinner, Daniel excused himself to help his father with something in the study. I offered to help Margaret with the dishes, trying to find some common ground. She accepted, but her silence was heavy as we stood side by side in their enormous kitchen. The only sound was the clinking of plates and the running water. Then she stopped, turned off the faucet, and faced me. Her blue eyes were ice cold. "You seem like a nice girl," she said, her voice measured and calm. "But I need to be honest with you. Daniel is going to inherit a significant legacy. He needs someone who understands our world, our standards, our expectations. Someone from the right background." I felt my stomach drop, but I kept my composure. "I love Daniel," I said quietly, "and he loves me." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Love is lovely, dear. But it is not enough. You will never be part of this family. You do not have what it takes to fit into our circle. I suggest you reconsider this relationship before you both waste more time." I stood there, dish towel in my hands, feeling like I had been slapped. The worst part was not her words. It was the certainty in her voice, the complete conviction that she was right. That I was not enough. That I would never be enough. When Daniel and I left that night, I did not tell him exactly what his mother had said. I just told him dinner was difficult, but those words burned inside me. "You will never be part of this family." They played on repeat in my mind as I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of my tiny studio apartment. Daniel and I got married 6 months later at City Hall. It was a small ceremony, just us and 2 witnesses we pulled from the street. His parents did not attend. Margaret made it clear that if he married me, he would be making a choice. He chose me, and they cut him off financially. No more trust fund access. No more family connections. No more safety net. We moved into a cramped 1-bedroom apartment in Somerville. The heating barely worked, and we could hear our neighbors through the paper-thin walls. Daniel got a job at a consulting firm, and I was still freelancing, building websites for small businesses, trying to make ends meet. We ate pasta most nights and saved every penny we could, but we were happy. Or at least, we told ourselves we were. Daniel never complained, but I could see the weight of his decision in his eyes sometimes. The way he looked at his old friends' social media posts, the vacations and the dinners and the life he had given up. For me, I worked constantly. Every evening after Daniel went to bed, I stayed up coding, learning, building. I taught myself new programming languages. I took online courses in business development and digital marketing. I reached out to every small business owner I could find, offering my services. Some said yes. Most said no. But slowly, very slowly, I built a client base. One night, about a year after we got married, I was sitting at our kitchen table with my laptop, surrounded by empty coffee cups. It was 3 in the morning. Daniel came out of the bedroom, half asleep, and sat down next to me. "What are you working on?" he asked. I showed him. I had been developing a software platform for small businesses to manage their customer relationships, inventory, and sales all in one place. Something affordable, user-friendly, and scalable. I had been working on it for months, using my clients' feedback to refine it. "This is incredible," he said, scrolling through the interface. "Have you thought about turning this into a real company?" I laughed. "With what money? We can barely pay rent." But he was serious. "We could figure it out. Apply for small business loans. Find investors. I believe in this. I believe in you." Something shifted in that moment. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the memory of Margaret's voice saying I would never be enough. But I decided right then that I was going to prove her wrong. Not for her. For me. We spent the next 6 months preparing. Daniel helped me write a business plan while working his full-time job. We cut our expenses even more. We applied for every grant and loan program we could find. Most rejected us. But one small business development program in Massachusetts gave us a $15,000 grant. It was not much, but it was a start. I called the company Vertex Solutions. The idea was simple but powerful. Small businesses were being ignored by the big software companies. They needed tools that were affordable and easy to use. I knew their pain points because I had been working with them for years. I understood their struggles because I was living them. The first year was brutal. I worked 18-hour days. Daniel helped with sales and marketing after his regular job. We maxed out our credit cards. We ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. Our apartment was our office. Our kitchen table was our conference room. But slowly, we started to gain traction. 5 clients became 10. 10 became 20. By the end of the second year, we had 50 clients and enough revenue to hire our first employee. A young developer fresh out of college, just like I had been. Someone hungry and willing to work hard. We moved into a small office space in Cambridge, just one room with exposed brick and questionable plumbing, but it was ours. Daniel eventually quit his consulting job to work with me full-time. He was incredible at building relationships with clients, understanding their needs, making them feel heard. We made a good team. And every night, when we collapsed into bed, exhausted but proud, I thought about Margaret's words. "You will never be part of this family." Good, I thought. I will build my own. 3 years after starting Vertex Solutions, we had grown beyond anything I had imagined in those early, desperate days. We had moved from that small brick room in Cambridge to a full floor in a modern building in the Seaport District. The morning sun reflected off Boston Harbor, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I had a team of 35 employees, most of them young, hungry, and brilliant. The kind of people who believed in what we were building. Revenue had grown to $5 million annually. We were not a unicorn startup, not one of those companies you read about in TechCrunch, but we were profitable, sustainable, and growing steadily. More importantly, we were solving real problems for real people. Our client base had expanded to over 300 small businesses across New England, and we were starting to get inquiries from other regions. Daniel and I had moved out of our cramped Somerville apartment into a beautiful brownstone in the South End. It was not Beacon Hill, not the kind of place the Whitmores would consider appropriate, but it was ours. We had worked for every square foot of it. The mortgage was significant, but we could afford it. That feeling, walking through our own front door, knowing we had earned it, was better than anything his parents' money could have bought. But success brought its own complications. The bigger we grew, the more visible we became. Local business publications started writing about us. I was invited to speak at entrepreneur conferences. Daniel and I were featured in a Boston Magazine article about young couples building businesses together. That article changed everything. 2 days after it was published, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello, is this Emma?" The voice was familiar, but I could not place it immediately. "Yes, who is this?" "It is Richard Whitmore, Daniel's father." I nearly dropped my phone. In the 4 years since Daniel and I had gotten married, I had not heard from either of his parents. Not a call, not a card, nothing. Daniel had tried to reach out a few times, especially during holidays, but he was always met with cold silence or brief, formal responses. "Mr. Whitmore," I said carefully, "this is unexpected." "Yes, I imagine it is." His voice was gruff, uncomfortable. "I read the article about your company. Impressive work." "Thank you." There was a long pause. "I listened, your mother and I. We may have been too harsh when you and Daniel first got together." "May have been." The words almost escaped my lips, but I bit them back. "I waited. We would like to see Daniel. And you, of course. Perhaps dinner, something casual. If you are willing." I told him I would talk to Daniel and call him back. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Not from fear or nervousness, but from something else. Anger, maybe. Or vindication. I was not sure which. That night, I told Daniel about the call. He sat at our kitchen island, a glass of wine in his hand, processing. For a long moment, he did not say anything. Just stared into his glass. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I do not know." He looked up at me, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. But they are still my parents. "We do not owe them anything," I said. "I know. But maybe enough time has passed. Maybe they have changed. People like your mother do not change, Daniel." But he wanted to believe they could. And because I loved him, I agreed to the dinner. We met them at a restaurant in Back Bay, the kind of place with white tablecloths and a wine list the size of a phone book. Margaret was already seated when we arrived, looking exactly as I remembered her. Perfectly coiffed, impeccably dressed, pearl necklace in place. Richard stood to greet us, shaking Daniel's hand firmly and nodding at me with something that might have been respect. The dinner was awkward but civil. They asked about the business, about our lives, about our plans. Margaret smiled at appropriate moments, asked polite questions, and complimented the food. She did not apologize. Not once did she acknowledge what she had said to me in her kitchen 4 years earlier. But she was trying, in her own limited way, to be pleasant. "Your company sounds fascinating," she said at one point, her voice smooth. "You must be very proud of what you have built." "We are," I said simply. "Daniel has always been resourceful," she continued. "I am glad to see that quality is serving him well." "Emma built this," Daniel said firmly. "I just help." "Of course," Margaret said, that smile never quite reaching her eyes. A true partnership. As the dinner went on, I realized what was happening. They had not reached out because they had changed. They had reached out because we had become successful. Because we were no longer an embarrassment. Because in their world, success was the only currency that mattered, and we had finally earned enough of it to be worth their time. When we left the restaurant that night, Daniel was hopeful. "See, that was not so bad. Maybe we can rebuild something with them." I nodded, but I knew better. This was not reconciliation. This was Margaret repositioning, making sure she was not cut out of her son's life, now that his life looked different. Now that we looked like we might be worth something. Over the next few months, the dinners continued. Always at nice restaurants, always polite, always carefully controlled. Margaret never apologized, but she was present. And slowly, painfully, Daniel started to let his guard down. He wanted his family back. He wanted to believe that the years of silence were behind us. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was in my office reviewing quarterly projections when my assistant knocked on my door. "Emma, there is someone here to see you." She says she does not have an appointment, but she insists it is important. "Who is it?" "Margaret Whitmore." I felt my stomach tighten. What was she doing here? I told my assistant to send her in. Margaret entered my office like she owned it, taking in the space with those evaluating eyes. She was wearing a gray suit, tasteful jewelry, her hair perfect as always. She sat down in the chair across from my desk without being invited. "This is lovely," she said, gesturing around. "You have done well for yourself." "Thank you," I said carefully. "What can I do for you, Margaret?" She folded her hands in her lap, that practiced smile on her face. "I wanted to talk to you about something delicate. Richard and I have been discussing our financial situation, and well, things have become complicated." I waited, saying nothing. Richard's firm has been struggling. The commercial real estate market has been difficult, and we have had to make some adjustments. We are not in dire straits, of course, but we are being more cautious with our spending. "I am sorry to hear that," I said, though I was not sure if I meant it. She leaned forward slightly. I am here because I am looking for new opportunities, something to keep me engaged. And I thought, given your growth, you might have a position available. Something in client relations or business development. I have years of experience in social circles and networking. I could be quite valuable to your organization. It took every ounce of self-control not to let my jaw drop. Margaret Whitmore was asking me for a job. The woman who had told me I would never be part of her family was sitting in my office, in the company I had built from nothing, asking me to hire her. I see, I said slowly. Can I ask why you are interested in working here specifically? Well, you are family now, she said, as if the last 4 years had not happened. And I believe in supporting family enterprises. Family, I repeated. That is an interesting choice of words. Something flickered in her eyes. A brief moment where the mask slipped and I saw something else. Not quite desperation, but close. She needed this. Whatever was happening with Richard's business, it was worse than she was letting on. Let me think about it, I said. I will need to discuss it with Daniel and review our current hiring needs. Of course, she said, standing up. Take your time, but I hope you will consider it. I think we could work well together. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, staring out at the harbor. The irony was almost too perfect. The woman who had deemed me unworthy was now asking for my approval, my acceptance, my charity. I could say no. It would be so easy to say no. To let her feel a fraction of what I had felt standing in her kitchen all those years ago. To show her what rejection felt like when it came from someone she had dismissed. But that was not who I wanted to be. And more than that, I realized this was not about revenge. This was about showing her, finally, who I really was. Not through words or arguments, but through actions. That night, I talked to Daniel. He was stunned when I told him about his mother's visit. I could see the embarrassment in his face, the shame that his parents' financial troubles had brought them to this point. What are you going to do? He asked. I am going to hire her, I said. Are you serious? Yes, but on my terms. She will start at an entry-level position. She will report to our client relations manager. She will work the same hours as everyone else, follow the same rules, earn her place just like everyone else did. No special treatment because she is your mother. No exceptions. Daniel looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You're a better person than I am. No, I said. I am just someone who understands what it means to earn something. And it is time your mother learned that too. Margaret Whitmore started working at Vertex Solutions on a Monday in late September. The leaves were beginning to turn in Boston, that brilliant display of orange and red that makes the city feel almost magical. She arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than most of my employees made in a week. I watched from my office as she stood in the lobby, looking around at our space with barely concealed judgment. Our office was modern but practical. Open floor plan, standing desks, a kitchen area where people actually talked to each other. We had a game room with a ping-pong table that got used during lunch breaks. There were whiteboards covered in diagrams and ideas, and the dress code was casual. Most of my developers wore jeans and hoodies. It was about as far from Margaret's world as you could get. I had assigned her to work under Jessica Reeves, our client relations manager. Jessica was 32, sharp as a knife, and had worked her way up from an intern position 3 years ago. She was exactly the kind of person who had earned everything she had, and I knew she would not give Margaret an inch of undeserved ground. I introduced them in the conference room. Margaret, this is Jessica. She will be training you and managing your daily responsibilities. Jessica, this is Margaret Whitmore. She will be starting as a client relations associate. Jessica extended her hand, professional and courteous. Welcome to the team, Margaret. I am looking forward to working with you. Margaret shook her hand, and I saw that flicker of discomfort. She was not used to reporting to someone younger, someone who had not come from her social circle. But to her credit, she kept her composure. Thank you. I look forward to learning from you. The first few weeks were an adjustment for everyone. Margaret was placed in a cubicle near the client relations team, not a private office. She had a standard company laptop, not the premium model. She had the same benefits package as every other new hire. And most challenging of all, she had to actually do the work. Her job was to handle client inquiries, schedule meetings, manage follow-ups, and support the account managers. It was not glamorous. It required patience, attention to detail, and a genuine desire to help people solve their problems. The kind of work that builds a business from the ground up. I watched her struggle those first days. She was used to telling people what to do, not taking instructions. She was used to being the person others deferred to, not the one who had to prove herself. I saw her frustration when Jessica corrected her on an email she had written that was too formal and off-putting for our client base. I saw her embarrassment when a 25-year-old developer explained how our software worked and she struggled to understand. But something unexpected happened. She kept showing up. Every morning at 9, she was at her desk. She took notes during training sessions. She asked questions, even when I could tell it wounded her pride to admit she did not know something. Slowly, painfully, she began to learn. About a month in, I was walking past her cubicle when I overheard her on the phone with a client. It was a small bakery owner in Worcester who was having trouble with our invoicing system. Margaret's voice was different than I had ever heard it. Patient, kind, actually listening. I understand how frustrating that must be, she was saying. Let me walk you through it step by step, and if we cannot figure it out together, I will get one of our technical specialists on the line. We are going to solve this for you today. I stopped, standing just out of sight, and listened. She spent 20 minutes with that client, never once sounding condescending or impatient. When she finally resolved the issue, I heard the relief in the client's voice thanking her. After she hung up, I walked over to her cubicle. That was good work, I said. She looked up, surprised. Thank you. Mrs. Chin was very stressed, but I think we got everything sorted out. That is what we do here, I said. We solve problems for people who need help. People who are trying to build something, just like we are. Margaret nodded, and for the first time, I saw something genuine in her expression. I am beginning to understand that. The holidays approached, and with them came the busiest season for small businesses. Our clients were retailers, restaurants, service providers, all of them managing year-end rushes and trying to close out their books. The entire company went into overdrive. 14-hour days became normal. Everyone pitched in wherever they were needed. I was not sure how Margaret would handle it. I half expected her to complain, to say this was not what she signed up for, to remind us of who she used to be. But she did not. She stayed late with everyone else. She brought in coffee for her team during the morning rushes. She even learned how to use our internal support system well enough to handle basic technical questions, taking pressure off our developers. One evening in mid-December, I was the last one in the office, or so I thought. It was past 10, and I was reviewing contract renewals for the new year. I heard movement in the kitchen and walked over to find Margaret there making tea. You are here late, I said. So are you, she replied, not looking up from the kettle. I was just finishing some client follow-ups. We had a lot of inquiries today. You do not have to stay this late, Margaret. The work will be there tomorrow. She poured her tea and finally turned to face me. When I was younger, she said quietly, my father ran a small printing business. This was before I married Richard, before the Whitmore money. I used to help him in the shop after school. Filing, answering phones, cleaning the machines. It was not glamorous, but it was honest work. And it was his. He built it himself. I had never heard the story. I leaned against the counter, listening. When I married Richard, I left all of that behind. I became Mrs. Whitmore, society wife, hostess, philanthropist. I thought I was moving up in the world. And maybe I was. But I also left behind the part of me that understood what it meant to build something. To work for something. She took a sip of her tea, her hands wrapped around the mug. What you said to me that day in your office about earning something. You were right. I had forgotten what that felt like. I had spent so long being the person who judged others based on where they came from that I forgot where I came from. I did not know what to say. This was not an apology, exactly, but it was something closer to honesty than I had ever gotten from her. My father lost that business when I was 17, she continued. Bad debt, poor decisions, bad luck. He was never the same after that. I think that is why I clung so hard to the Whitmore name, to the security it represented. I never wanted to feel that vulnerable again. And when Daniel chose me, I said softly, you saw it happening again. Him giving up security for something uncertain. She nodded. I was wrong about you. I judged you based on fear, not on who you actually were. And I am sorry for that. I should have said that a long time ago. We stood there in the quiet office, just the two of us and the soft hum of the heating system. Outside, Boston was lit up with holiday lights, the city beautiful and cold. Thank you, I said finally. That means something. She smiled, a real smile this time. You have built something remarkable here, Emma. Not just the company, but the culture, the team, the way people actually care about the work. I see why Daniel fell in love with you. You have a strength I did not recognize back then. Over the following months, something shifted between us. Not friendship, exactly, but a mutual respect. Margaret became good at her job. Really good. She had a way with clients that came from years of navigating complex social situations. She could read people, understand what they needed, make them feel valued. Her conversion rate on client renewals was the highest on the team. Jessica pulled me aside one day and said, I do not know what you did, but Margaret is actually an asset. She is teaching our younger associates how to handle difficult clients, and her attention to detail is catching problems before they become issues. I promoted her after 6 months. Not because she was Daniel's mother, but because she had earned it. She became a senior client relations specialist with a small team reporting to her. She did not get her own office. She did not get special perks, but she got the recognition that comes from doing excellent work. Daniel and I had her and Richard over for dinner one Sunday evening. It was casual, just the four of us in our kitchen, homemade pasta and salad. Richard looked older, more tired than I remembered. His real estate firm had downsized significantly, and he was transitioning into semi-retirement. But he seemed lighter somehow, less burdened by the weight of appearances. This is lovely, Margaret said, looking around our kitchen. You have made a beautiful home. Thank you, I said. We like it. She paused, setting down her wine glass. Emma, I never properly thanked you for giving me this opportunity. The job, I mean. You could have turned me away, and no one would have blamed you. But you did not, and it has changed my perspective on a lot of things. We all deserve a chance to prove ourselves, I said. You just needed the opportunity to show what you were capable of when you were not worried about what everyone else thought. Richard reached over and squeezed his wife's hand. She comes home tired now, he said with a small smile. But she also comes home proud. I had not seen that in years. After they left, Daniel wrapped his arms around me as we stood in the kitchen doing dishes. You did not have to do this, you know. Give her a job, give her a chance. After everything she said to you. I know, I replied. But holding on to anger would not have changed anything. She needed to learn who I really was. And maybe she needed to remember who she really was underneath all that social armor. Besides, I added with a slight smile, having her work for me is not revenge. It is just the universe balancing itself out. Daniel laughed, kissing the top of my head. I love you, you know that. I know. And your mother is finally starting to understand why. 2 years after Margaret started working at Vertex Solutions, we had grown to 120 employees and expanded into a second office in Providence, Rhode Island. Our revenue had crossed $15 million annually, and we were being approached by venture capital firms interested in funding our expansion into new markets. Daniel and I spent long nights discussing whether to take outside investment or continue growing organically. It was the kind of problem I had dreamed of having back when we were eating ramen in our Somerville apartment. Margaret had become an integral part of our client success team. She now managed a department of 12 people, and her client retention rate was consistently above 95%. She had developed a reputation for being tough but fair, demanding excellence, but also supporting her team when they struggled. Several of her reports had told me privately that she was the best manager they had ever had. What surprised me most was not her professional growth, but her personal transformation. She started coming to our company happy hours, actually talking with the younger employees about their lives and their goals. She mentored several women on the team, sharing lessons from her own life, including her mistakes. She became someone people genuinely liked, not just respected out of obligation. One afternoon in early spring, Margaret knocked on my office door. I was buried in a pitch deck for potential investors, but I gestured for her to come in. Do you have a moment? She asked. There is something I want to discuss with you. Of course, I said, closing my laptop. What is on your mind? She sat down, and I noticed she was holding a folder. I have been thinking about my role here and where I can add the most value going forward. I love what I do, but I also think there is an opportunity we are missing. I am listening. She opened the folder and slid a document across my desk. I have been tracking our client demographics, and I noticed something. Most of our clients are first-generation business owners. People who are building something from scratch, just like you did. They are incredibly talented at what they do, whether it is baking or plumbing or graphic design, but many of them struggle with the business side. Financial planning, scaling operations, navigating growth. I nodded. That was true. We heard it all the time from our clients. I think we should start a mentorship program, Margaret continued. Pair our established clients with newer ones. Offer workshops on business fundamentals. Create a community where people can learn from each other. And I would like to lead this initiative. I looked at the proposal she had put together. It was thorough, well-researched, and exactly the kind of value-added service that would differentiate us from competitors. But more than that, it was personal. This was Margaret using everything she had learned, both from her successes and her failures, to help others avoid the mistakes she had made. This is excellent work, I said. How long have you been developing this? A few months. I have been talking to clients, understanding their pain points, thinking about how we could support them beyond just software. We have the platform, but we could be so much more. We could be partners in their success. I love it. Let us put together a pilot program and see how it goes. Her face lit up in a way I had never seen before. Real joy, unguarded and genuine. Thank you, Emma. This means a lot to me. Margaret, I said, leaning back in my chair. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why is this so important to you? Not just the job, but this specifically. She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. When I started here, I thought I was doing this because I had to, because our financial situation required it. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about necessity and started being about purpose. I spent 25 years of my life focused on appearances, on maintaining a certain image, on judging people based on arbitrary standards. And I missed everything that actually mattered. She looked out the window at the harbor, the spring sun making the water sparkle. These clients, these small business owners, they remind me of my father. And of you, when you first came to our house all those years ago. They are people who are building something real with their own hands. And I want to help them. I want to be part of something that actually matters. You already are, I said quietly. You have been for a while now. That summer, we launched the Vertex Business Community Program with Margaret as its director. We started with 20 clients, pairing them with mentors and offering monthly workshops on everything from financial management to marketing strategy to work-life balance. The response was overwhelming. Clients told us it was the most valuable part of their relationship with us. Margaret threw herself into it completely. She was at every workshop, knew every participant by name, followed up personally on their progress. I watched her transform from the woman who had once dismissed people like our clients into someone who genuinely celebrated their victories and supported them through their struggles. One evening, we held a graduation event for the first cohort of the mentorship program. It was in our office, casual and warm, with catered food from one of our clients' restaurants. Participants shared their stories, talking about how the program had helped them navigate challenges and grow their businesses. A woman named Sandra, who ran a small landscaping company, stood up to speak. She was in her 50s, weathered hands and bright eyes. Before this program, she said, I felt like I was drowning. I was good at the work, but I did not understand cash flow or how to hire employees or how to plan for growth. I thought I was stupid, that I did not belong in business. She looked directly at Margaret, but Margaret sat down with me every week. She did not make me feel small for not knowing things. She just helped me learn. And now, I have hired 3 new employees, I have a 5-year business plan, and I actually feel like I know what I am doing. So thank you. Thank you for seeing me as capable even when I did not see it myself. The room erupted in applause. I saw Margaret wipe her eyes quickly, trying to hide her emotion. But I saw it, and I saw something else too. Pride. Real, earned pride that had nothing to do with where she came from or what her last name was. Pride that came from helping someone else succeed. After the event, as we were cleaning up, Margaret and I stood together looking out at the Boston skyline. The city lights were beginning to come on, and the harbor was turning gold in the setting sun. You know, she said quietly, when you married Daniel, I thought you were taking something from me. From our family. I thought you were diminishing us somehow. And now, I asked, now I realize you gave us something we had lost. Purpose. Meaning. The understanding that value comes from what you contribute, not what you inherit. You taught me that, even though I fought against it for so long. I taught you how to check inventory management systems, I said with a slight smile. You did the hard work of changing yourself. She laughed softly. Fair enough, but you gave me the opportunity to do that work. And you did it even though I did not deserve it. We stood there quietly for a moment. Then Margaret said, there is something I never told you. That night at dinner, when I said you would never be part of this family, Richard told me I was wrong. He said you had more integrity in your little finger than most people in our social circle had in their entire bodies. We fought about it for weeks. It nearly ended our marriage. I did not know that. He was right, of course. He usually is, even though I rarely admit it. She turned to face me. You are the best thing that ever happened to this family, Emma. Not because of this company, or because of your success, but because you showed us what it means to earn something, to build something, to be someone worth respecting. Thank you, Margaret, I said. That means more than you know. The following months brought changes I had not anticipated. Richard started volunteering with a nonprofit that helped veterans transition to civilian careers. He said working with people who had real problems put his own struggles into perspective. He looked happier than I had seen him in years, lighter somehow, like he had put down a weight he had been carrying for decades. Daniel and I celebrated our 7th wedding anniversary that fall. We went back to that coffee shop near MIT where we had first met, the one where I had been working as a barista. It was still there, still serving overpriced lattes to stressed students. We sat in the same corner booth where we had our first real conversation, back when I thought he was just another entitled rich kid and he thought I was the most interesting person he had ever met. Do you ever regret it? I asked him. Giving up everything your parents offered. The easy path. He reached across the table and took my hand. Not once. Not for a single second. You gave me something better than money or connections. You gave me a life that actually means something. Even when we were eating ramen every night. Especially then, he said with a smile. Because we were building something together. We were proving something. To my parents, to the world, but mostly to ourselves. I thought about Margaret's words in the kitchen all those years ago. You will never be part of this family. She had been wrong, but not in the way she thought. I had not become part of the Whitmore family by conforming to their standards or proving my worth by their measures. I had created something different, something better. A family built on respect earned through action, not inherited through blood. Vertex Solutions continued to grow. We opened a 3rd office in Portland, Maine. We hit $20 million in annual revenue. We were approached by a major tech company interested in acquiring us, offering an amount that would have made Daniel and me wealthy beyond anything I had imagined in those early days. We turned them down. This was not about an exit strategy or a big payday. This was about continuing to build something meaningful, about supporting the small businesses that were the backbone of the economy, about creating jobs for people who wanted to work hard and grow. Margaret was in the meeting when we announced our decision to the leadership team. I watched her face as I explained our reasoning. We started this company to solve problems for people who needed help, I said. To be partners with small business owners who were building their dreams. Selling to a corporation that would just absorb us into their portfolio would betray that mission. So we are staying independent, and we are going to keep growing on our own terms. After the meeting, Margaret pulled me aside. That took courage, she said. Walking away from that much money. It is not courage, I replied. It is just knowing what matters. You taught me that, actually. She looked surprised. I did. When you started here, you could have gone through the motions. Done the minimum. But you did not. You threw yourself into it. You found meaning in helping people. You showed me that success is not about the biggest number or the most impressive title. It is about the impact you have on people's lives. Margaret's eyes got misty. Coming from you, that means everything. That winter, we held our annual holiday party at a venue in the seaport. The entire company was there, plus clients, partners, and families. It had grown from our early days when we would just order pizza in the office and call it a celebration. Now it was a real event, with a live band and catered food and speeches. I stood up to give my annual address, looking out at the faces of everyone who had been part of this journey. Some had been with us from the beginning. Others had joined recently. But they all shared something: the belief that small businesses mattered, that helping people succeed was worth doing, that work could be about more than just a paycheck. 7 years ago, I started this company in a cramped apartment with nothing but an idea and a laptop. I did not come from money. I did not have connections. I just had a belief that small business owners deserved better tools and better support. And I had a partner who believed in me, even when I did not believe in myself. I looked at Daniel, who was standing near the back of the room, smiling at me with that same look he had given me in the coffee shop all those years ago. But this company is not just about Daniel and me. It is about every person in this room who has worked late nights and solved impossible problems and cared deeply about our clients. It is about choosing to build something meaningful instead of just chasing profit. It is about proving that you do not need to come from the right background or have the right connections to create something remarkable. You just need to work hard, treat people with respect, and never stop learning. I paused, my eyes finding Margaret in the crowd. She was standing with her team, and for a moment our eyes met. And sometimes, the most important lesson is that people can change. That it is never too late to remember what really matters. That dignity comes from what you contribute, not what you inherit. The room erupted in applause. The band started playing. People moved toward the bar and the dance floor. It was loud and chaotic and joyful, everything a celebration should be. Margaret made her way over to me through the crowd. "That was a beautiful speech," she said. "Thank you." I meant every word. She hesitated, then said, "There is something I have wanted to give you for a long time." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small box. This was my grandmother's. She was a seamstress who came to this country with nothing and built a small tailoring business in the North End. My father's mother. She taught me that work was dignified, that building something with your own hands was noble. She opened the box. Inside was a simple silver bracelet, worn smooth with age. When I married Richard, I put this away. I thought it was beneath the image I was supposed to project. But I want you to have it, because you embody everything she believed in. Everything I forgot for too long. I felt tears prick my eyes. "Margaret, I cannot take this. It is your family heirloom. You are family," she said firmly, "and you have earned this in a way I never did. Please." I took the bracelet, feeling the weight of it, the history it carried. "I will treasure this. Thank you." She hugged me then, a real embrace, not the polite air kisses she used to give. When she pulled back, she was crying too. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for showing me who I could be." "You did that yourself," I said. "I just gave you the space to do it." The party continued late into the night. I stood near the windows, looking out at Boston Harbor, the city lights reflecting off the dark water. Daniel came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Happy?" he asked. "Very," I said. "Are you?" "Beyond measure." He kissed my cheek. "My mother asked me earlier if I ever regretted choosing you over the family money." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that I did not choose you over money. I chose a real life over a comfortable prison. I chose building something meaningful over inheriting something hollow. I chose love over obligation." I turned to face him. "And what did she say?" "She said she finally understood, and that she was proud of me." He smiled. "I do not think she has ever said that before. Not like she meant it." We stood there together, watching our team celebrate, watching the city sparkle in the winter night. I thought about that girl who had stood in Margaret's kitchen 7 years ago, being told she would never be enough. I thought about the nights of ramen and doubt. I thought about every rejection and every small victory that had led to this moment. I had not set out to prove Margaret wrong. I had not built this company for revenge or validation. I had built it because I believed small businesses deserved better, because I wanted to create something meaningful, because I refused to accept that my background determined my worth. But somewhere along the way, something unexpected had happened. Margaret had not just become an employee. She had become a partner in the mission, someone who genuinely cared about the work and the people we served. She had found her way back to the values her grandmother had taught her, the dignity of honest work and the joy of helping others succeed. "You know what the best part is?" I said to Daniel. "What?" "She does not work for me. She works with me. There is a difference. He smiled. You are a better person than I am. I might have enjoyed the revenge a little. There is no revenge in this, I said. Just growth. Hers and mine. That is the real victory. As the party wound down and people started to leave, Margaret came over one last time. She had her coat on, ready to head home with Richard. I just wanted to say, she began, then paused, searching for the right words. I wasted a lot of years being the wrong kind of person. I hurt people, including you. I cannot get those years back, but I can make sure the years ahead are different. You already are, I said. Every day. She nodded. See you Monday. See you Monday. After everyone had left and the venue was quiet, Daniel and I stood alone in the empty space. The decorations were still up, champagne glasses scattered on tables, the remnants of celebration all around us. Can you believe this is our life? He asked. Sometimes I still feel like I am going to wake up in that tiny Somerville apartment. Would that be so bad? I asked. We were happy there too. True. But this is better. Not because of the money or the success, but because we built it together. Because we proved we could. I looked at the silver bracelet on my wrist, Margaret's grandmother's bracelet, a seamstress who had come to America with nothing and built a business with her own hands. Not so different from me, really, or from the hundreds of clients we served. All of us building something, creating value, proving that worth was earned, not inherited. You know what Margaret said to me that night? I asked Daniel. In her kitchen. I know the general idea. You have never told me the exact words. She said I would never be part of the family, that I did not have what it took to fit into their circle. Daniel's jaw tightened. I wish you had told me the exact words back then. I did not need to. I knew even then that she was wrong. Not because I wanted to be part of her family or her circle, but because I knew I was building something better, something real. And you did. He pulled me close. You build a family based on respect and shared values and genuine connection. You build a company that actually helps people. You build a life that matters. That is so much more valuable than anything my parents' world could have offered. We left the venue and walked out into the cold December night. Boston was quiet, that special kind of stillness that comes late at night in winter. Our breath made clouds in the air, and the city felt clean and full of possibility. As we drove home through the empty streets, I thought about all the versions of myself I had been. The barista who served coffee to wealthy students. The girlfriend deemed unworthy by her boyfriend's mother. The entrepreneur eating ramen and praying the business would survive. The CEO building a company and a team and a vision. Each version had been necessary. Each struggle had taught me something. And somehow, impossibly, it had all led here. To a life I was proud of. To work that mattered. To relationships that were real. Margaret had said I would never be part of her family. And she had been right in a way. I had not become part of the Whitmore family as it existed then. Instead, I had transformed it into something different. Something better. A family built on earned respect rather than inherited status. A family that understood the value of work and the dignity of building something with your own hands. That night, lying in bed next to Daniel in the home we had earned together, I felt a profound sense of peace. Not because I had proven Margaret wrong. Not because I had achieved success, or wealth or status, but because I had stayed true to myself. I had built something meaningful. I had treated people with respect even when they had not respected me. And somehow, through all of it, I had helped someone else find their way back to themselves. The girl who had stood in that kitchen 7 years ago, holding a dish towel and feeling like she would never be enough, would have been amazed by this life. But she also would have recognized it, because even then, even in that moment of rejection, there had been a core of steel inside her, a refusal to let someone else define her worth, a determination to build something real. That girl had become this woman, and this woman had built a life worth living, not in spite of Margaret's rejection, but in some strange way because of it, because being told you are not enough can either break you or forge you into something stronger. I chose stronger, and in doing so, I had shown Margaret that she could choose it too. That it was never too late to remember who you really were beneath all the pretense and fear. That dignity came from contribution, not inheritance. That family was built through respect and shared values, not through blood and social standing. My mother-in-law had said I would never be part of her family. She had been wrong. I had not joined her family. I had created one. And eventually, she had chosen to be part of mine. That was not revenge. That was grace. And it was the sweetest victory I could have imagined.